G'day everybody, how you going today? It is so good to see you. I do hope you are super well. Today I'm gonna bring some Nikon news. It's been quite a while since I've done a little bit of a roundup of the latest news with Nikon. There's been so much happening so quickly. Of course, we had the release of the Z8, then we had firmware 4.0 with auto capture, then we had the 70 to 180 2.8, and now the 180 to 600. That's been a lot of output in the last month or so. And I've got an up and coming 180 to 600 video that has been shot, but some of these videos are quite a long time on the edit desk, coming soon. And please do check out this video here, which is the 14 to 30. It has taken me a couple of years to make that video, but I'm pretty proud of it. It's a nice little video showing off how awesome that lens is, along with a comparison video between three 70 to 200 2.8s and the 70 to 180 2.8. Both, that video is there, both of those videos are a great watch. Lots of examples, it's real world, so you can see what actually goes on in the real world. In community news, I just wanted to share the fact that just yesterday I found out that our friend Chuck from AP Studios has been offline for, I think, something like 10 days. I've reached out to the community. We're not 100% sure where things are at yet with Chuck, but what I will say, Chuck, is that we're all here, we're all thinking of you, we're all worried about you, we're all sending you a lot of love, and we look forward to seeing you back on the air as soon as possible. Some other news slash updates. Firstly, I would like to thank SmallRig for sending me this. It's nice, isn't it? Yeah, no. This is the Z8 cage with the handle. Makes it really good for holding on to it and filming. Obviously, this is more for the videographer side of things. This cage here, it has all of the cable wrangling, which I love that, to protect your cables, along with all sorts of extra add-on areas, including the handle here at the top. The whole idea of adding a cage is so you can add so many extra accessories. So there's a video specific about the latest SmallRig stuff coming soon. The blue UltraSync device here. Now, we've used this for the first time just a couple of weeks ago, actually, when we were shooting this video here, which is the 180 to 600 launch video. And what this does is it sends out Bluetooth time code to any compatible device. In the case of our particular video, we sent it out to two Z9s and a Z8, and it's really cool. It works. Now, there is one little curveball about this device that probably won't affect most people, and it's clearly something that just needs to be adjusted in firmware. But you can't use the Blue Sync and the Ultra Blue Sync and the MCN10. So that is something worth remembering and thinking about. Otherwise, I love the fact that we're all on the same time code. This can also be sent to Atomos Ninjas and also various sound recording devices, as well as an electronic iPhone app, Slate, which again connects they all connect via Bluetooth. But for the price of this and the fact that you get syncing, very cool. More coming on this device, but working for real. Finally, just in other updates, I want to talk about the YOLO. Now, the YOLO here is a pretty intriguing device because it does so many different things. We can see here it has all of these ports on the top. Now, what the YOLO is it's a vision switcher, so you can have up to 3 HDMI in, USB in, microphones in, and you can software switch here on the screen. It's also a recorder, so you can record 1080p, and you can have, there's an SD slot here, which allows you to record, something coming on that soon. But this other slot here is for a SIM card. So this will connect to a 4G mobile phone network, and you can broadcast live switch. And from within the device, you can have titling, you can have video queued up, stills queued up, and this thing will allow you to live broadcast. And all of this includes the battery, the power, along with it being a big screen as well. So it's all self-encapsulated. You can be in the field just using this device and let's say 2 HDMI cameras like the one we're shooting on now and one other camera, switch between them and have a wireless microphones like we have here today. Really intriguing. So my plan is to make a video about that. Plus, well, I'm going to be using it live in the field from now on, where applicable. I think to me the most exciting news across the last week or so is dynamic range testing Z8 versus Z9, with the Z8 having a slight improvement over the Z9. So that shows to us something that I did theorize a couple of months back, the idea that the Z8 and the Z9 might have the same hardware, they might have the same sensor, but you can tweak with the software side of things ever so gently and perhaps just improve things ever so slightly. That is my theory on what has happened here. So that means the gap is being closed between the Z8 and the D850. Now, right now, the difference at base ISO, 64 ISO, the difference between a D850 and a Z8 is less than 1/3 of a stop of dynamic range. Pretty negligible when you're saying 1/3 of a stop across 11 to 12 stops. So if you break that into increments over the whole gamut of dynamic range, it's a less than 3% difference across the whole range. In black we have the D850 and in blue we have the Z8, and we can see it is just 0.32 of a stop, 1/3 of a stop being 0.333 recurring. When we get down to 500 or 503, it's 9.6 dynamic range versus 9.54. But strangely enough, when we get to 640 ISO, which I've said now for quite a long time, I think it is a really powerful place to be on your Z8 and Z9, we can see here that the Z8 is actually better than the D850. 9.21 versus 9.1. And then this tussle occurs as we go down the range, becoming negligible. The notion that the D850 sensor is better is open to interpretation. There is this area here where the D850 is clearly ahead. It cannot be argued. But strangely, none of this is a stop. All of this, biggest a difference gets is around about half a stop. And this one here being massive, but you just don't shoot at 400, just go to 500. You can avoid that particular point. That was 0.46. As I've talked about repeatedly, a D850 does not have in-body stabilization, which gives you 2, 3, 4, 5 stops of stabilization. Now, of course, that does not work in every scenario, but in the scenarios where it does work, well, these differences are absolutely blown out of the water, because on your D850, you'd have to shoot all the way down here. But what I am finding now, and that is a dynamic range of 7.87, is that I can shoot handheld with some of the things that I do, sometimes at half a second or 1 second, quarter of a second, and I'm shooting at base ISO. I'm shooting so many things at base ISO. For street photographers, landscape photographers, potentially travel photographers, there's all sorts of use cases where this 1/3 of a stop, half a stop, and actually no difference at all, the Z8's actually better. There are plenty of examples where the Z8 blows the D850 out of the water because it simply does not have to go to higher ISOs, along with all of the other advantages that come with a stacked sensor. Speed, the fact that you now have a mechanical shutterless camera, which gives you a much longer life and you're able to shoot so much faster. We now have 20 frames per second in RAW if you want it, and up to a whopping 120 frames per second in full screen JPEG at 11 megapixels. And if that's too much, maybe you just want to do APS-C sized images at 60 frames per second in JPEG. Either way, this is all crazy, simply not possible with the old sensors, the way that they scanned, and mechanical shutters. There are advancements, they just happen to not be specifically at base ISO in dynamic range. Like we've said, to repeat again for the last time, it's less than 1/3 of a stop with the Z8, but at 640 ISO, Z8 and Z9 are actually better. It's really interesting, and obviously what this means is next iteration, which of course will come because technology is always marching on. Who knows? Who knows what will come next? From my perspective, the things that I'm most interested in seeing are higher ISO performance, which I've talked about for years, better dynamic range performance, which I've talked about for years. Global shutters seems to be an obvious next step because we're pretty close to it at this point in time with the Z9 and the Z8. They're the things I'm interested in seeing, and of course some people are interested in seeing more megapixels. So we'll see which way the industry goes. But I still think with diffraction in the mix, and to remind people what diffraction is, once we get over 60 odd megapixels, which is where the A7R4 and A7R5 are, diffraction becomes an issue above f8, and this actually means your image starts to get softer. It's real, I've tested it, it actually happens. There are a lot of trade-offs going on in the world right now as sensor technology is pushed to the absolute limit. It's always being pushed to the limit, and it'll be really interesting to see what Sony, they'll probably have the next major breakthrough, knowing Sony, maybe. But right now, Nikon, from my perspective, in this mirrorless hybrid space, Nikon with the Z8 and the Z9, they hold the sensor right now that is the absolute best all-rounder, just giving you everything from fast shooting, great rolling shutter performance, great 8K and video performance, and everything underneath that. Which leads me on to, well, the next article is how well the Z8 is selling in Japan. And with information from 5 of the largest stores in Japan, the Z8 is #1 in all of them. Now, I suppose this kind of makes sense. It is, and it has been the launch month, the launch time. And I suppose any camera that's as good as the Z8, and a lot of people are considering it the ultimate all-rounder right now, absolutely. It makes sense that it's at the top. But then if you look across all of the other cameras in these 5 stores, it's a real mix. Like the Z9 is coming in at #2 in some of these stores. The Sony A7 IV appears a couple of times in 3rd, 4th, 5th position. The A7R5 appears in 1 or 2 stores down the bottom. The Z8 is performing very well. I've got no reason to believe this will slow down until everybody who wants one gets one. There are a few people in my comments who are from other systems who are thinking about it. They're considering it. They're asking me, how do, for example, adapters like the Megadap E to Z adapter, how do they work if I'm wanting to bring across some of my Sony lenses to the Nikon Z experience? This bodes super well for Nikon. Obviously, there's an extraordinary range of lenses now available, and that segues me over to my last 2 articles, which is there is now a new version from Megadap coming of the E to Z adapter, and it is called the E to Z Pro. It looks to have some ergonomic changes to make taking the adapter on and off a little bit easier. Beyond that, I don't know what the advantages are. I will reach out to Megadap and ask them if they would send me a copy of that so I can show you all how it works. In more Nikon lens news, Sirui, if that's how you pronounce it, they are releasing lenses for the E, X and Z mount, which is so exciting. And thus what we're going to have here is anamorphic autofocus lenses. There are just so many native Z first and third party lenses available now. And then of course, when you take into account all the adapted lens opportunities, there is an absolute smorgasbord. And as we know, F to Z adapted lenses work the same, if not better, as long as they're not the old screw-driven ones, which haven't been designed and released new now for over 20 years. Yes, some were still on sale, but they were old designs. I've also got coming soon from Viltrox the 75mm 1.2 autofocus lens for APS-C. So I look forward to showing you how good that lens is. APS-C 1.2. That is a lot of light gathering capability, making that, for me, a great street lens. And of course, for many, they would consider that a great portrait lens. And for those that missed it, there has been a maintenance advisory for some Z8s. Pop your serial number into Nikon's website and they will let you know. My Z8 is part of this maintenance advisory, and it's about lenses not being able to mount. I've never had an issue with my lenses mounting or unmounting. I'm using the Z8 right now, and I've taken all sorts of lenses on and off it, including large lenses like the 180 to 600, which I was using yesterday. I don't think it's a big deal, but it's certainly worth getting it done. Nikon do it for you. They'll ship your camera back to you, and this maintenance advisory is for life. If you decide not to do it for 5 years, they will still do it for you in 5 years' time. The warranty will not be applicable in this case. And finally, just to keep in mind that the 70 to 180, I think, is shipping later this month, and I believe the 180 to 600 is shipping sometime next month. So there is lots going on. It's been so good to see you. Please let me know in the comments below, is any of this exciting to you? Will you be getting the 180 to 600? Is the E to Z adapter something that you might get? Do you have a Z8? How's it going? Please let me know all of this and more in the comments below. I absolutely love hearing from you, and it's so good to see you. And if this is your first time here, I would love to see you again. So please do subscribe, please share, and please like this video. All right? Bye for now.